going to be replacing the stock lid thermometer on an 18.5-inch Weber Smokey Mountain Cooker. Now in this video, we're not going to debate the merits of the lid thermometer in the Weber Smokey Mountain Cooker. I know different people have different opinions about that. Let's just say that there are plenty of people who believe that it is something useful in their cooker. And maybe I'll do another video on another day talking about the merits and the demerits of the lid thermometer. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and assume that somebody has a Smokey Mountain Cooker with the standard stock built-in lid thermometer, and they want to either change it because theirs is defective, or they want to perhaps upgrade it to something that is a larger dial format or that is of higher quality. But first, let's talk a little bit about the history of thermometers in the Weber Smokey Mountain Cooker. Weber Smokey Mountain Cooker came out in 1981, and they came out with the 18.5-inch model. Shortly thereafter, they came out with the 14-inch model you see in the background. That did not last for long. They didn't do a great job of marketing it. It didn't sell very well. And by 1982 or thereabouts, that cooker was discontinued. So really from 1981 until 2008, all you really had in the market was the 18.5-inch smoker. And it did not have a thermometer in the lid. We used to dangle a thermometer through the lid vent, a candy thermometer, or the thermometer from a Genesis gas grill, or a probe thermometer, a number of such things we would dangle through here. In 2009, Weber came out with the 22.5-inch Smokey Mountain Cooker. And this cooker had a lid thermometer built in by default. And when they did that, they went back and retrofitted the 18.5-inch cooker to also have a lid thermometer. Now fast forward to 2014, Weber brought back the 14-inch Smokey Mountain Cooker. And that cooker had a lid thermometer, as you can see right there. So now every Weber Smokey Mountain Cooker in the lineup comes with a lid thermometer. And before we get too much further, I should take this opportunity to point out that the thermometers between these three cookers are almost identical. They're completely identical between the 14.5-inch and the 18.5-inch smoker. The dial is 1 3/4 inches wide. The stem, the part that goes down into the cooking section to measure temperature, that's 1.5 inches long. They are passed through a hole in the lid. It's 3/8 of an inch wide. It's not a threaded hole, it's just a smooth hole. And the temperature range is from 100 to 350 degrees Fahrenheit in 5-degree increments. The 22.5-inch Smokey Mountain Cooker is exactly the same in terms of its stem length and the range of temperature on the dial, as well as the size of the hole in the lid. The only difference is that this cooker has a 2 1/4 inch wide dial face to make it a little bit easier to read, and to make the scale of it, match a much larger cooker. So let's start by removing the thermometer and see what we've got. As you can see, the stock thermometer is held in place by a single wing nut, and we're going to just remove that wing nut to take the thermometer off the lid. Now, of course, if your cooker is used and dirty and greasy, it might be more difficult to remove that wing nut, but just take a pair of pliers and gently unscrew it. And then the thermometer pulls right out of the lid. So let's take a look at what we've got. We've got the wing nut, which I'll put in my pocket, and then we have the thermometer. The thermometer is actually made up of two pieces. There's the thermometer itself, the part that measures the temperature, and then there's this other piece which is called a bezel. And a bezel is just a little fancy add-on that gives the thermometer a more professional look. Instead of having the thermometer standing up like this off the lid of the cooker, the bezel creates a transition between the thermometer and the lid, and it gives it a nice professional look that you'd expect on a high quality smoker or gas grill or other charcoal grill. There are a couple of interesting features about this that you may not be aware of, and that is that there's a little metal tab here on the back of the thermometer. You can see it right here. And that little tab passes through this square hole in the top of the bezel, and then it goes through that little slot that you may have noticed in the lid when I took the thermometer off. These are ways of aligning the pieces together so they don't spin on the lid. When the little slot on the thermometer goes into the little square of the bezel, then I'm turning the stem on the back, it will not spin within the bezel. And then when you insert this into the lid of the cooker, the tab on the back of the bezel engages the slot in the lid, and the whole thing won't spin around. That's kind of a neat little feature. That's a feature you're gonna lose when you replace this thermometer with anything else, because no one is producing thermometers that have little tabs on the back, and you won't be able to, in most cases, reuse this bezel on your Smoky Mountain cooker. So this piece is out of the picture. So you will end up with a replacement thermometer, whatever you choose, that's gonna be standing up like this. If my finger's the lid, it'll be standing up off the lid, something like this, and you won't have that smooth professional transition of a bezel. But if you want a larger dial, or you want something that actually works or that works better, you are gonna have to let go of the concept of a bezel. I tried to find a replacement thermometer that would work with this bezel, and I thought I found one made by Teltrue. It had the 1 3/4 inch size dial that fit inside this bezel, and it would fit through the 3/8 inch hole in the lid of the cooker, and it looked great. The problem was that the scale on that thermometer was from like 50 degrees to 750 degrees or something like that. It was a huge range of temperature on a little tiny dial, and that meant that the range that we want for a smoker, between 200 and 350, let's say, that range, instead of being a wide part of the range and easy to read on the dial, it was little tiny range like this, and it made it very difficult, even up close, to read. So although it looked great and looked very professional, I didn't think it was very functional. So I tossed that sucker out and tried something else. I tried this thermometer, also from Teltrue. It's called the BBQ-25, and it has just the right length of stem, and it's a good quality thermometer. The only problem with it, though, and let me take the wing nut off the back. Only problem is that it does not fit inside the bezel. It sits on top of the bezel. So it does have a good range, though, from 100 to 500. That's a perfect range for grilling and barbecuing. If you like the look of that, and it will spin on top, unfortunately, but you just have to tighten it down enough, but not too much, to prevent that. This is not a bad option. This is the Teltrue BBQ-25. It's got a good 2-inch stem on it, which is okay for our purposes, and it connects with a wing nut, and it's got a small threaded fitting on it that will go through the 3/8 inch hole in the lid of your Smoky Mountain cooker. The only concern about it is that when you place the thermometer through the bezel, you see there's an impression in the bezel, and there's like a gap of space between the back of the thermometer and the bezel. And the concern is that when you tighten this up with the wing nut, that you could actually deform the back of the thermometer, which is not be a good thing. So the solution to that was to use one of these. This is it's a little, you can see it screwed on here. It's what's called a thread cutting nut, 7/16 hex, 1/4 inch stud. It's made by a company called Hillman. The part number is 138381. It's very cheap. It comes in a packet of like four of them like this at the hardware store. And all that it does is it sort of fills the gap. It just sits there like that, and it fills the gap, the space between the back of the thermometer and the grommet. So now when you put on the wing nut and you tighten it down, you're not going to get any deformation of the back of the thermometer dial. So this is a workable solution, possibly. The Teltrue BBQ-25 if you want to reuse your grommet on the 14.5 inch or the 18.5 inch Smoky Mountain Cooker. This doesn't work on the 22.5 inch smoker because the grommet on that guy is a much larger grommet because the thermometer dial is a much larger dial. This would actually go inside that grommet, but there'd be a gap of space around the edge, so that may not be what you're looking to do. So the next choice, beyond the tell-through that I just showed you, is something like this. And this is a really popular thermometer that people use. I have to just disclose the fact that I have not personally used this, so I can't speak to its quality. I'll make a few comments about it in a moment based on what I see, but this is from a company called Dozy Ant, and it's this ubiquitous blue face thermometer that you've seen, or red, white, and blue face thermometer you've seen everywhere on the internet, on YouTube, on pits galore that people have got out there. Upside down, looks like that. It has the appropriate temperature range. It goes from 100 to 150. It has the smoking section and the barbecuing temperature sections highlighted, which is okay. It has the 3/8 inch threaded back on it, so it goes right through the hole in your 14.5 inch, 18.5 inch smoker. It gives you a larger dial. This is just over 3/8 of an inch wide, 3 inches wide, and it gives you a slightly longer stem. The stem is just over 2 inches, I think it's 2.5 inches long in the spec. And it comes with a threaded nut that you see on the back for tightening it up instead of a wing nut. This is an absolute easy, just drop into your cooker, tighten it up, and away you go. Let me show you how this goes on. I'm gonna pass the stem through the hole in the lid. It does come with a washer, which I'll put on here first. And then there's the nut. And that just goes on quite easily. You want to tighten that with a wrench, tight but not too tight. And here's the finished product. It's a little bit crooked, so I'll straighten it out like that. As I mentioned, there's no way of locking it in place. There's no alignment pin on this thermometer to engage the slot in the lid, so you'll have to align it by hand and then tighten it sufficiently to hold it in place without over tightening it. And here's the close-up view of this installation. I think it looks very professional. It's got the range we're looking for of 100 to 550 degrees Fahrenheit. It's got the smoking range indicated of 225 and below, the barbecue range of 225 to just over 350. I think it's a good looking installation. The price is right. It sells for about $13 on Amazon at the time of this video. It has over 3,000 ratings, and they're good ratings, so most people seem to be satisfied with this thermometer. The only concern I have about it is that when you compare it to a really high quality industrial grade thermometer that sells for more like $50, you can really tell from the weight of it and the construction of it that it's just not the same. It does not seem to have a gasket that seals the glass against the body, so I don't know whether people have a problem with condensation with this thermometer the way they do with the Weber stock thermometer. A lot of people complain that Weber's thermometer gets condensation under the glass. If you have experience with this thermometer, please put a comment down below the video and let us know whether you have a problem with condensation or not with this type of replacement thermometer. I will put a link to this particular thermometer at Amazon.com in the description of the video. You need to be very careful when ordering it. There are many, many thermometers that have this look, the red, white, and blue dial. They're all coming from China. I don't know if they're all the same quality or not. The prices can vary a little bit, but they do come in different sizes of dials and stem length, and the connector, the screw part on the back that needs to go through this 3/8 inch hole in the lid. There's some of them that come with a much larger thread, which is the kind that screws into more of an higher end stick burners and things like that. So you need to be looking very carefully for a thermometer that has the specs of this one, about a 3-inch dial, a stem that's about 2 to 3 inches long, and it has a 3/8 of an inch threaded connector on the back that will fit through the 3/8 inch hole in the lid of this 14.5 inch, 18.5 inch, or 22.5 inch Smoky Mountain Cooker. The beauty of this choice, this thermometer, is that it requires no drilling through the lid. You can just take out the stock and you can put in the replacement. Very, very quick and easy. And again, I would invite those of you who have used this type of thermometer or maybe something similar, something in this $12 to $13 range, this sort of drop-in replacement. If you've had experience with this kind of thermometer, please tell us in the comments below whether you would encourage other people to use a replacement like this. So what other alternatives do you have if you want to replace your stock thermometer with something else? Particularly if you want something that is known to be much higher quality, you're looking at probably an industrial grade thermometer, and those are more in the $50 range or higher, I guess, these days. They're used for industrial processes in factories. I mean, they have got to be accurate for chemical processes, food service processes, and so on. And they are made with very strong construction, really good stainless steel construction, and they've got sealed glass dial faces that will not, you'll have no problem with condensation on those. And they're extremely accurate and they will last for years. I have got a industrial grade thermometer in my Smoky Mountain cooker from back in the days when they didn't come with thermometers and we had to draw out the lid. And that thermometer has now been with me for over 20 years and it still works great and it's still accurate. And it was just a great thing for me to have done so many years ago. But they do require that you drill out the hole in the lid because they require about a 3/4 inch wide hole. And you can use the 3/8 inch hole as a starter, and then you can drill out that hole to make it bigger. There are at least 3 ways that I know of to drill out the hole in the lid, and I've done, I guess I've done all 3 of them actually. So one is to use a 3/4 inch hole saw. That's something that many of you would already have in your toolkit. And you just center that on top of the existing 3/8 of an inch hole and drill it out and make it 3/4 of an inch wide. Another way to do it is to use what's called a step bit. A step bit is a cone-shaped bit that has steps on it that represent different widths of hole. And you simply drill through each step until you get to the size you want. And you got to make sure that your step bit goes up to 3/4 of an inch. And once you have drilled through the 3/4 inch step, you've got the hole that you need. That's kind of a specialty tool that many of you will not have. It's a great tool to have in your arsenal though, so if you're looking for a reason to buy a multi-function drill bit, you might want to go get yourself a step bit. And I'll put a link to that down in the description of the video. And finally, if you happen to know an electrician, there's a hole cutter that electricians use to make 3/4 inch holes for connecting conduit. And it's a 2-piece contraption that has a thread that goes through it. And you put 1/2, you do have to have a starter hole. And of course you have that with a 3/8 inch hole in the cooker. So you pass part of it through the hole and the other half sits on the outside of the cooker and you tighten up the nut and it gets tighter and tighter and it just cuts a hole right through the lid. And it does a pretty good job of that. But that again is a specialty tool. You probably will not want to buy that. But if you have a brother-in-law who's an electrician, you might check that out as well. Now, once you've got that 3/4 inch hole in the lid, there's a bunch of different possibilities for what kind of industrial grade thermometer you want to use. The one that I would recommend is Tell-Tru. I mentioned Tell-Tru earlier in this video. They make a lot of high quality thermometers for industrial purposes, but they also make them for grilling and barbecuing. The thermometer you see here and that I have used many times on Smoky Mountain cookers is the BBQ-300. It comes with a bright white face. There's another version that comes with a black face. They measure 3 inches across the dial. The stem is 2.5 inches long. And they have what's called a 1/2 inch NTP thread on the back. Now that may seem kind of strange to you that we drilled a 3/4 inch hole for something that's called a 1/2 inch NTP thread, but trust me when I tell you that it fits just right. The threads pass all the way through the hole. You don't thread them into the hole, it just passes through the hole. And then on Amazon, they have an installation kit you can also buy for just a few more dollars. It has a washer that sits on the outside surface of the lid and kind of receives the back of the thermometer. And then there's a special threaded fitting that screws on from the inside. That thermometer right now is selling for, I think, about $51 for the white face and about $55 for the black face. They both are great quality units. They will probably outlast your cooker as long as you don't beat them up. It's a really good investment in quality for your Weber Smokey Mountain Cooker. But it does require that you're willing to get out your drill or some other such tool and make a bigger hole in the lid of your Smokey Mountain Cooker. And going back to the 22.5-inch cooker for a moment, I would say that if you're going to replace the stock thermometer on this cooker, you might as well just step up and drill out that hole to 3/4 of an inch and then go ahead and install a Tell-True BBQ-300. It just does look really great on the scale of this size on this cooker. And if you spend as much money as this cooker costs anyway, you might as well go ahead and not mess around with a rinky-dink $12 thermometer. Get yourself something of higher quality, and I think you'll be very satisfied with that decision. Okay, as I'm editing this video, I'm realizing that perhaps I've said a few things that might be confusing, and I don't want anyone to go away from this video confused. Now, the area where I may have created the most confusion is around the hole size you need for the larger industrial type thermometers. They have what's called a 1/2 inch NPT thread on the back. NPT stands for National Pipe Thread Standard. And all of these large format industrial thermometers will tend to have a 1/2 inch NPT thread on the back. Tell-True says that for their thermometers, you need to make a hole that's 7/8 of an inch in size for their thermometer to fit in the lid of your smoker. Now, in the pictures I showed here where I was working with some family members to install this thermometer in a Smokey Mountain Cooker, we did use a 3/4 inch hole saw and made this hole, and the thermometer fit perfectly. Now, perhaps we reamed it out a little bit, I don't remember after the fact, but I think it fit in a single cut. I think you should be pretty successful if you try to use that method. And again, if necessary, you could ream out the hole a little bit, or you could take a round file and open it up just a little bit so the thermometer fits through the hole. If you use the step drill bit shown here, make sure you get one or have one that makes a 7/8 of an inch hole. Start cutting it at 3/4 of an inch, see if the thermometer fits, and if not, you can drill it out to the larger steps in the step bit and make a hole that will fit. And then finally, if you happen to have that brother-in-law who is an electrician, and he has this particular knockout punch that's used for conduit, it will make a 7/8 of an inch hole, so you'll be all set. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up this video for today. I have an article on the Virtual Weber Bullet website for installing thermometers. I will link that in the description of this video, and you can read more about the process of doing these things, and you'll see some additional photographs that might be helpful to you. There's an example of how to drill out a larger hole in the lid, and there's also the description of that smaller BBQ-225 thermometer that I tried to retrofit to the 14.5 inch and 18.5 inch smokers. So please check that out if you want more information. I would be very curious to hear your comments about this video. Please post them below. I read every one of them, and I try to respond to most of them as I can. I'd also invite you to please post your comments about this topic of replacing the thermometer. I would encourage you to please not debate, the worthiness of a lid thermometer. That's not what this video is about. We can do that another day in another video. But if you have replaced your lid thermometer with something else and you want to share your technique or your product or your results, positive or negative, I think that would really help other people. So please feel free to do that in the comment section below. So that's it for today. I want to thank you for watching. I appreciate you very much. If you please like and subscribe to my videos, I appreciate it. Those are both signals to YouTube that I'm creating good content that should be recommended to other people. And it means a lot to me if you do that for me. So thank you very much in advance. And until next time, take care, everybody. Happy cooking. Bye-bye.